This file was closed after observation lost practical value. The object to which the record relates continues to operate under normal conditions. The causes of the discrepancy between recorded data and the current state were not established. This file constitutes a reconstructed archival record of the Sector Division of the Department of Spatial Isolation. The materials were transferred to archive storage after standard control methods ceased to produce reproducible results. The file concerns observation of a round-the-clock supermarket located in the city of Springfield, in the state of Illinois. The object under observation is a typical retail structure situated in a residential area of the city. Operations were standard. Night shifts were conducted with a minimal number of staff. No deviations were recorded during daytime hours. Initial inconsistencies were detected in the morning. The condition of the sales floor did not correspond to reports from the previous shift. Aisles changed order. Passage lengths differed. Certain sections were duplicated despite their uniqueness in design documentation. The changes appeared complete. No signs of haste or error were identified. The layout was perceived as having been assembled anew according to a different but internally consistent scheme. Visitors reported difficulties with orientation. Familiar routes led to different zones. Some passages proved longer than expected. Complaints were not filed. The changes were perceived as the result of overnight rearrangement and did not require explanation. Even those who noted discrepancies were unable to identify a specific element. Descriptions were reduced to impressions. Verifiable facts were absent. Storage areas contained goods not reflected in procurement orders. Packaging met standards. Expiration dates were valid. Manufacturers were confirmed to exist. No documentary traces of delivery were found. Night staff reported no intrusions. Equipment functioned normally. Surveillance cameras did not record unauthorized presence. Recordings remained continuous. Comparison of video materials with morning inspections revealed discrepancies. The layout on recordings did not always match the physical state. At this stage, no incidents involving staff or visitors were recorded. No disappearances were observed. No direct threats were identified. This allowed the process to remain outside the scope of immediate response. The decision to transfer materials to the Sector Division was made after confirmation of the regularity of the changes. They did not depend on personnel. They did not depend on deliveries. They did not depend on operating schedule. The task was defined as observation. Intervention was deemed premature. All subsequent events resulted from the fact that changes continued even in the complete absence of people within the building. After transfer of the materials to the Sector Division, a decision was made to conduct passive night observation. Intervention was excluded. Personnel presence was reduced to the mandatory minimum. No additional staff were assigned. Lighting schedules and logistics were maintained without change. The condition of the sales floor and storage areas was documented at the moment of closing and at morning opening. During the first nights, no deviations were detected. The layout at closing corresponded to the morning state. No changes were present. On the third night, discrepancies became evident. Individual aisles shifted relative to their original position. Passage widths changed, while the overall logic of the sales floor was preserved. Load-bearing structures were not affected. Engineering elements remained in place. No traces of physical impact were detected. Shelving showed no damage. Mounting fixtures remained intact. No signs of equipment relocation were observed. Storage zones demonstrated a similar pattern. Part of the pallets contained goods not reflected in inventory systems. Unit quantities were within permitted storage volumes. Packaging met established standards. Supplier verification confirmed the absence of such shipments. It was determined that changes did not occur in the presence of people. Even brief presence of an observer during night hours resulted in the absence of deviations. After complete evacuation of the building, the changes resumed. Surveillance cameras did not record the moment of reconfiguration. Recordings remained continuous. No gaps or visual distortions were identified. Comparison of video materials with the actual state revealed discrepancies not attributable to recording error. Over time, a stable pattern emerged. New configurations proved more convenient for movement. Routes became shorter. Load on checkout zones was distributed more evenly. Product placement corresponded to customer behavioral models rather than internal standards of the retail chain. No optimization algorithms were applied. No official layout updates were issued. The management company provided no directives. The sector division recorded that the space does not respond to instructions. It responds to use. It does not reproduce the previous scheme. It assembles a new one. Attempts to artificially disrupt the configuration were deemed undesirable. Any intervention was considered a factor of process distortion. Observation was continued. The changes demonstrated a directed character and repeated after full restoration of the original layout. The space did not preserve order. It selected it anew. Night observation continued for several weeks. The nature of the changes remained consistent. The space did not accelerate and did not degrade. Each configuration appeared complete and functional. A decision was made to permit limited presence during night hours. Observers remained inside the building without authorization to move through the sales floor. The current layout was not disturbed. No changes occurred in their presence. However, deviations were again recorded in the morning. Day shift staff began reporting difficulties with orientation in storage areas. Routes used for years no longer corresponded to the actual placement of passages. Returning along a familiar path led into different zones while the visual structure remained recognizable, and no abrupt inconsistencies were identified. The situation was attributed to fatigue or the effects of overnight rearrangement. No formal complaints were filed. After some time, similar reports were received from night staff. Certain areas of the sales floor were perceived as deeper than expected. Distances between reference points did not match habitual perception. Traversing the same routes required more time. Control measurements revealed no deviations. The dimensions of the building remained unchanged. Load-bearing elements corresponded to design plans. Engineering systems showed no discrepancies. Inconsistencies manifested exclusively during movement. In several reports, repetition was noted. Staff indicated that while moving between storage and sales areas, they passed through visually identical sections multiple times. These reports were not accompanied by alarm and were classified as subjective. The first irreversible episode was recorded without witnesses. One night worker failed to appear at the start of the morning shift. The absence was discovered several hours later. Search of the building produced no results. Personal belongings were found in their assigned locations. No signs of struggle were detected. Access systems recorded no exit beyond the perimeter of the object. Video recordings showed the employee moving from the storage area into the sales floor. Further movement was not recorded. The recording did not terminate. No distortions were detected. Cameras continued to operate under normal conditions. The section between the last recorded position and the exit contained no obstacles. The incident could not be explained by internal causes. Following this, the sector division changed the observation status. It became clear that the changes affected not only spatial organization, but also the ability to retain a person within the structure without the application of force. No direct indicators of threat were identified. However, deviation from a familiar route no longer guaranteed return. After the first disappearance, night shifts were reduced and part of the operations was moved to daytime hours. The store continued to operate because no formal grounds for closure existed. The sector division insisted on maintaining the customary regime since abrupt measures were regarded as intervention capable of altering the nature of the process. For several days, no new disappearances were recorded. This was interpreted as confirmation of the isolated nature of the incident. However, it was during this period that the character of the changes shifted. Reconfigurations ceased to be limited to night hours. Inconsistencies began to be recorded during the working day. Aisles retained their positions, yet the distance between them was perceived differently. Travel time from entrance to checkout varied without changes in route. Storage areas no longer corresponded to accepted distribution logic while remaining functional. Personnel continued operations. Deviations were perceived as inconveniences. Threats were not articulated. For this reason, no intervention followed. The sector division imposed movement restrictions on observers. Only pre-approved routes were permitted. Any deviation was prohibited. Despite this, discrepancies were recorded. While following an approved route, observers arrived in zones not provided for by schematics. Return occurred without effort. No loss of time was recorded. Measurements revealed no deviations. Surveillance systems continued operation without malfunction. However, comparison of recordings with routes demonstrated inconsistency in building geometry. The space no longer appeared mutable. It appeared complete. At the end of the week, a second irreversible episode was recorded. A day shift employee failed to make contact at the scheduled time. The last fixation showed movement between two adjacent aisles. Several minutes later, the individual was located in a storage zone to which access was not authorized. No physical injuries were recorded. The employee was unable to describe the moment of transition. He reported that he continued moving through the sales floor and that the transition itself was not perceived. Following this, the sector division revised its assessment of the situation. The space no longer depended on the absence of people. It began to intervene in movement without resistance and without disruption of perception. Control was lost not due to aggression and not due to system failure. Control was lost because the changes became normal. After the second episode, the store formally continued operations. No grounds for suspension of activity were identified. The sector division recommended maintaining the customary regime, since abrupt changes were regarded as a factor capable of influencing the nature of the process. Night shifts were reduced to a minimum. Part of warehouse operations was transferred to daytime hours. Reasons were not explained to personnel. Observation continued. Over time, the changes ceased to be recorded as discrete events and came to be perceived as background. The layout stabilized. Aisles no longer demonstrated noticeable reconfiguration. Warehouse contents corresponded to inventory records. Visually, the space appeared complete. This was identified as a deviation. Comparison of the current configuration with the original project revealed discrepancies. The dimensions of the building had not changed. Load-bearing elements corresponded to drawings. Inconsistencies concerned the connections between zones. Some routes used in the current configuration were absent from all previous versions of the layout. At the same time, they were used daily and did not generate remarks. An attempt to restore the original scheme was undertaken once. Over the course of a single night, the sales floor and storage areas were brought into full conformity with project documentation. All actions were recorded. Changes were documented. By the time of opening, the configuration matched the previous stable version. No traces of intervention were detected. Following this, the sector division abandoned further corrective actions. Official observation was concluded. Materials were transferred to archive storage. The object was removed from active lists. A service note stated that the process did not result in direct losses and did not require continued control. The final entry was made several months later. Stabilization of attendance was recorded. Average customer dwell time increased. Movement routes became predictable. No complaints were registered. In a separate line without explanation, it was noted that subsequent redevelopment of the surrounding urban area began to replicate the internal logic of the store. The date was not indicated. The file terminates.